Okay, so in this video we're going to explore how we can use our indifference curve and budget line analysis and our knowledge of substitution of income effects to solve a multiple choice question. So we are told that the consumer is demanding two goods. The initial equilibrium is at point R, and then the final equilibrium is at point T. So firstly, let's look at our budget lines and try and establish what has happened to create this change in equilibrium. So the budget line is pivoting outwards like this. So of course that means that the price of good X has fallen, so X has become cheaper, and we're assuming that your nominal income is unchanged and the price of Y is unchanged, reflected by the fact that this point M remains on both budget lines. Okay, so the price of X has fallen, and then the consumer's response is to move from R to T. That is our price effect or our total effect. So what's the direction of that effect? Well, on X, we can see that we've increased our consumption of X when we move from R to T. So the price effect is positive on X, but also we can see that our consumption of Y has gone up. So the price effect is positive on Y. Now let's break it down into substitution effects and income effects. So clearly X has become relatively cheaper. That induces the consumer. It pushes the consumer to substitute more units of X for fewer units of Y. The substitution effect is reflected by this movement from R to S. And of course, because X is now relatively cheaper, the substitution effect is positive on X, negative on Y. That's what we would always expect to see. Income effect is now this S to T, right? Remember, the idea is that we're giving the consumer back their full purchasing power, and they're moving from S to T as a result of that. What direction of income effects can we see here? Well, the income effect is negative on good X because it's inducing or causing a fall in consumption of good X as we move from S to T, and it's positive, clearly, on good Y. Okay, so that straight away tells us that good X is in fact an inferior good in this situation, doesn't it? Because the fall in the price of X makes you richer in real terms, but the income effect on X is negative, meaning that good X is in fact inferior. What's the relationship between good X and good Y? Well, this one is quite tricky because you might think, well, surely they are substitutes, because when the price of X goes down, you substitute more X for less Y. But if you remember back to AS level, the concept of complements and substitutes was actually defined in terms of this concept, cross-price elasticity of demand. So the cross-price elasticity of demand measures your response in terms of consumption of one good, here Y, to a change in the price of another good. So in this situation, we've got a fall in the price of X, but the net effect of that is to actually create an increase in the consumption of Y. So the XED in this situation would actually be positive for good Y with respect to good X. It would be greater than 0. So that actually tells us that when X becomes cheaper, you buy more X and more Y, so then Y is a complementary good relative to X. So the answer here would be A. Okay? So that is how we solve this problem. Remember, step by step, logically, using your full command